Hello and welcome to Riverland Women, the podcast which celebrates the amazing achievements and inspiring stories of women across South Australia's Riverland. I'm your host, Kerry Lush from the podcast station. Join me each fortnight as we meet some of the extraordinary women who call this region home. This is Riverland Women. As Benjamin Franklin once said, from adversity comes opportunity. And that was certainly the case for Jenny Semmler from 919 Wines at Glossop. After the breakdown of her first marriage, the former pharmacist, then living in Victoria, threw herself into a winemaking degree. And then she met her now husband Eric. When a work opportunity in the Riverland presented itself to Eric, Jenny later followed. A few years later, 919 Wines was born. This is Jenny's story.
Oh, okay. How far back do you want me to go?
As far as you'd like. Where did you grow up?
Grew up in the Dandenongs outside Melbourne. Had a wonderful free childhood, exploring the mountains. This is in the days before helicopter parents. Used to grab my bike and just ride. And I kind of don't know many parents would be comfortable with their girl taking off on a bike and doing that these days, but that's what I did. From the Dandenongs, moved around Melbourne a bit when I grew up. I had a bit of a disastrous first marriage, but as a result of the first marriage, got into winemaking. So then when all of that went belly up, I actually met Eric afterwards, and he was studying winemaking along with me in a different year than me, but that was how we met. And the rest, as they say, is history. He came to Berry for work. I came to Berry for love.
What did you do before winemaking?
I was a pharmacist before that. Yeah, I left school, went and studied pharmacy. I enjoyed that, but got a little bit frustrated because in community pharmacy, it was just like production line dispensing and no career prospects as such. And hospital pharmacy in that stage was going through a lot of change. So I sort of did a little bit of retail, I did some hospital, and then I did some tutoring at the Monash Uni. But in the meantime, I was studying the winemaking and transitioning that career. So
Right. Well, are there any similarities? I mean, I know you were saying about production line, but I guess as a were you a compounding pharmacist?
Pharmacy's changed as a career since I did it. So when I did it, they still had the overhang of the old plant-based medicines, but they had a lot of new medicines and so forth. But I did learn how to do compounding. So we had a handbook basically with all the recipes in it, which were tried and true. But we also did a lot of things like pre-made medicines, pill counting, they used to call us, pill counters. In those days there was also what you call over-the-counter prescribing. So someone would come in and go, oh, I've got this thing on my finger, what is it? And you'd look at it and say, well, it's a wart, let's fix that up for you, sort of thing.
So then how did that relate to or correlate with your winemaking? With winemaking. What were some of the things that overlapped?
So the overlap really is in the scientific part. So when I studied my winemaking, a lot of the physics that I'd done translated over, all the chemistry that I did, because I'd done 3 strands for chemistry as part of the pharmacy, and that's a huge part of your winemaking. Microbiology is fundamental for winemaking, whereas it's only a portion of what you do for pharmacy. And so there were a lot of things with packaging, for example, that I could bring over from pharmacy into winemaking. But then winemaking's got the added dimension, which is your agriculture and the artsy-fartsy stuff to, how are we going to make this wine pleasant? A lot of sensory stuff in winemaking, which you don't get in pharmacy. So,
what was it about winemaking that you really thought it looks good?
Yeah, so the Outlaws, that's what I call them, and they know that because I'm still in touch with him. They planted a vineyard in Strathbogie Ranges, so they were pioneers in that regard. They planted Pinot Noir, Merlot, Sauvignon Blanc and Chardonnay. and sold their grapes through to Hanging Rock and Domaine Chandon, so it's a couple of quite well-known names. But I wasn't so interested. I'm not a green thumb, I'm a brown thumb. And so for me to, I was thinking, I've always loved fermentation with making my own bread and making my own ginger beer and that sort of thing. And so for me, it was just sort of a natural to get interested into the actual winemaking side of things.
Were you starting to tire of pharmacy or...?
There were a whole lot of reasons, some noble and not so noble, about why I left pharmacy. It was a complicated relationship I had with it, and it all was messed up because I was going through a fairly tumultuous time in my private life. So at that stage, it was sort of like, I'll do this as an extra, but it eventually became like my full-time career. So.
Were you studying that through University of Adelaide or somewhere?
No,
or?
that was from distance. That was distance education to Wagga, and in those days when I started, it was actually the Riverland Institute of Higher Education, and then that became part of Charles Sturt University, and that was before internet, so it was all done with big chunky printouts of books, and you posted your assignments in.
Handwritten, I guess, or could you print that?
Typewriter.
Typewriter.
Yep.
So that would have been easy.
Not so much for chemical formulae, but luckily I didn't have to do too many of them because I got a few exemptions. I can remember when I finished my bachelor's there, I did actually have an old IBM PC, which didn't automatically back up. So I can remember sitting there at 2:00 one morning going, I just go to save that. Wrong button.
Oh, no. No one do back then either.
That's all right. But yes, then I went on and did an honours by research, actually, which was really interesting. And I had what was it? I reckon it was an IBM laptop.
Oh, very fancy.
It was like 6 kilos,
Yeah.
but I could take it with me. And it had a massive 40 megabytes of RAM. No, that was a hard drive, sorry. So, yes, things have come a long way since then.
Haven't they? How did the study help you through that time when things were probably a bit upside down in your life?
Gave me the ability to focus, it meant that I could focus on something other than what was happening from day to day. I did have to take some leave for 6 months because it did get too much. There was a lot of court appearances and that sort of stuff, and it got pretty nasty. But it was a great sense of achievement. It was something that was mine, which was very important at the time, to have something that was mine that I'd achieved. And yeah, it was like a personal thing. It sounds, I'm just trying to describe it. Because I'd been white-anted a lot and undermined a lot, to actually have this thing that I'd done that was validated externally at a very high level, that was really important. So, yeah.
What did the kids think of you studying? How did you manage all of that?
Oh, I didn't at some stage.
Yeah.
At some point. So the kids had their own turmoil as well, because it was, I don't know how I've ended up with such two wonderful kids given everything they went through, but it was always about the kids first, and that meant I did some fairly radical things by taking children to my employment, for example, because I couldn't get childcare at certain times, those sorts of things. And I just did it without permission. I just went, they're coming with me, they can sit in the next room, you know. So it taught me to do some of the real ballsy things, you know. What is it? Act and ask permission later.
Like what, other than taking kids to work?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was a very difficult time, and I certainly wouldn't wish it on anyone, and I wouldn't want to do it again. But I've come out of it a different person and in a better way. So And I've done that myself.
Yeah, something to really hang your hat on. Yeah. Yeah, so how did you and Eric meet and then end up here with 919?
I met Eric at uni. I was in my last year, I think, and he was somewhere a couple of years behind me. I'd had a few exemptions because of the pharmacy background, and we ended up doing a prac together, and things were pretty raw, and I went out for a coffee break during an experiment that had been running, and he stepped out for a coffee break, and he said, "How you going, Jenny?" And I went, "Oh, could be better." And he looked at me and he went, "You too." And that was it. You know, from then we had a talk, and we sort of had a heart-to-heart and compared personal situations, and he was in a similar situation, and we did long-distance dating for a while. He about 6 months after we sort of met. I mean, we'd sort of met before that, but it was just like casual, you know, nothing special. Yeah, he'd separated, I'd separated, and then we sort of got together, and after about 6 months he got a job offer over here at Berry Estates, and he rang me up and he said, "I've got some news." And I went, "Oh, okay." I said, "Tell me." And he said, "I've been offered a job at Berry Estates in South Australia." And I went, "Oh, that's fantastic, you know." And he said, "Well, what does it mean for us?" And I said, "Well, let's give it a go." So we did long distance dating for 4 years. Could just about drive the road between Berry and Melbourne with a blindfold on. And eventually we decided that, you know, we really should get married. So that was good.
Yeah,
that
and
was
then
the best thing I ever did.
Did all the kids come into that as well? Like, how old were all the kids?
So there's a photo there behind you. David is missing. David ran away for the photo. They were sort of late teens, early teens.
Mm-hmm.
They were a bit concerned because, his boys in particular, they were a bit concerned about what it might mean. They thought that Tiffany and David living with us might have had a better deal. Tiffany and David's father had remarried a while before, so there was no big deal for them in that regard. But of course, everyone has to adjust. The boys soon discovered that just because they lived with us, it didn't mean they got an easy ride, particularly because they arrived from Victoria one time for a visit, only to find us right in the middle of one of those family dress downs that you give your children from time to time. But they tend not to sort of not interact so much with each other, but they all get on. So that's the main thing. And, I can never be their real mum. I never wanted to give them that impression, because their mum did a great job of raising them. And I never wanted Eric to be their real dad, because he wasn't. But I think that all the children have grown into a blended situation quite well. So, yeah.
Oh, good.
They're all adults now.
Yeah. So Eric came over here 4 years. You did the back and forth.
Yes.
And then you made the move.
Yes.
What did you do once you got here?
I'd given an undertaking to the court when I moved that I was going to concentrate on the children for the rest of the year. And then I took a job with RMT, River Murray Training. They needed training manuals written, so I gave them a hand with that. And then a job came up at Berry Estates, and so that was a bit interesting. They had to get permission from head office for me to work in an equivalent position to Eric, because they didn't want husband-wife pillow talk stuff. But that was okay. We worked in quite different departments. I went into laboratory and quality assurance and quality systems. So that was a challenge. Some bits I think I performed quite badly, but other bits I learned a lot and I think I did quite well. So, yeah, mixed bag.
How long did you work there for?
So I was there for 7 years, I think. Had a few big issues that sent me overseas from time to time, which was very interesting, and a lot of just general management stuff. So, yeah, didn't do winemaking as such, but used some of that pharmacy background for things like packaging, performance analysis and shelf life testing and tracking down quality issues that they'd had, those sorts of things. Yeah.
So we're not at Berry Estates now, we're here at 919.
Yes.
How did that all come about?
Well, Eric and I had always felt that this region in particular had concentrated on perhaps the wrong varieties, because it is quite a hot region. I know they like to call themselves warm inland, but coming from Melbourne, it's hot. And I had worked at Rutherglen with things like Giraffe and a few other interesting varieties in the Yarra Valley, like Marsan, when I was just a baby cellar hand. And so we felt that we'd like to do some stuff for ourselves, and we planted Giraffe, which nobody here had ever heard of, although I believe that Bill Malaradellis has a few patches. And then, we had to make it into wine. And we got a producer's licence, but it was all a bit sort of a sideline. It wasn't really a career as such. I'd like to say we had a brilliant business plan, but we didn't. We just went, okay, it's probably time to actually leave and make a real job of it. So we started off without a business plan and learned very quickly that we needed one.
So it's sort of grown quite organically then, by the sounds of it.
Yes. In more senses of the word than one, because we have organic certification here. So what we were doing here was about looking for things that work in this climate. So we planted a lot of things that nobody had heard of, or like the Giraffe, for example, Tempranillo, Touriga Nacional, Tintacow, some of these other things. Right back in 2002, 2003, we planted these.
Did you get some funny looks over the fence?
Oh, yes. Our neighbour, who sadly is no longer with us, came over one day and said, "What you doing there?" I can't do a Greek accent, I'm sorry. He said, "Your vines will die," because we'd put in drip irrigation. "Oh, we think it'll be all right." He said, "What for? Is it Cabernet?" "No, it's Giraffe." And he said, "What's that?" Which was pretty common comment.
You said earlier that you weren't really a green thumb, so
No.
Did you have to learn pretty quickly?
I've left the direction of the vineyard to Eric. I've been some of the unpaid help there, but I haven't done much vineyard work for a while now. But yeah, it was fun. I mean, who doesn't like getting out on Boxing Day and planting vines? 43 degrees.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. So how have things grown over the time? What do you grow now? How many acres? What sort of cartons or bottles of wine do you sell in a year?
So over time, we planted up everything here. We still have Giraffe. In fact, we ran out of room for our... we were selling all our Giraffe because it was something that was so unusual in South Australia. Almost every single brand in South Australia that exists now is because they'd seen us right back in the early days with Giraffe. There are a few exceptions, so Rusticana down Langhorne Creek and The Lane, they both make fantastic Giraffe, and they started about the same time as us. But a lot of the other brands I've seen because they came and tasted our wine at an event somewhere and went, "Oh my goodness."
It certainly is your signature wine, really,
It is
isn't
our signature wine, yes. So we do our pale dry Apera. So that was the first Riverland wine for a number of decades to win a major award.
What was that award?
That was the 2011 Adelaide Review Hot 100 Wine of the Year. So that was a South Australian award, but it put us on the map. In 2013, Eric won Wine State Winemaker of the Year. So that's an international award, Australia and New Zealand. So, yeah.
Winning those awards, what's that done for the 919 label?
So it's certainly made us more visible, and visibility is really important. It helped us to get distribution, because up until around about 2011, when we won that first award, we were really struggling to get anyone to take Riverland wine seriously. So, yeah, it's helped us to spread our geographic distribution of where we sell to.
Where to next for 919? And for Jenny and Eric?
Oh, okay. Jenny and Eric, well, we're getting on a bit now. It would be nice to take a step backwards, but the current state of the industry is probably going to be difficult. We are investing in young Seamus. You met Seamus before. He's our assistant, and we're trying to give him all the opportunities that we can here. Eventually, I'd like to kick him out of the nest so he can go and get some experience in a bigger winery, and hope that he comes back. He's an amazing young winemaker, and I really like to foster people who are keen, and they've got smarts, and he's got a good palate, and he's very thoughtful with what he does with the winemaking, and he challenges us sometimes with new things, which is really good. This is the only gardening I do. It's gardening of people, where I try and help them to grow. So he's part of the team, an integral part of the team now. One of the good things that's happened is this year our fortified wines seem to be finally having a moment in the sun. So they've been a bit stuffy and fuddy-duddy for the last 20 years. Nobody's wanted to know them, but suddenly they're all the vogue.
Oh, look at fashion. Everything old is new again. So
exactly.
Is that what you're putting it down to, like just a changing in trends, or is there something that's kicked it off?
I think partly it's fashion and a change in consumer preferences. The wine industry lost its way, I think, for a while. It had an identity crisis. It didn't know whether it was stuffy and arrogant and full of medals and awards, or whether it was young and funky and cloudy wine and low-slung jeans on the sommeliers, that sort of thing. And I think that lost a lot of our consumers. And so they experimented with different things. And so craft brewing had a moment, and there's still a lot of craft breweries around, although they are having a similar industry issues.
Gin had a big moment.
Gin
still
had a
having
big moment. Yeah, we actually considered putting in a still many years ago before they changed all the rules on that. Decided it was all going to be too much because it would all have to happen during vintage, and there wasn't enough of us to go around. But they changed the laws with distilleries, and so it's become very fashionable to have a distillery. And I think with beer and spirits, they've had their natural evolution from being something high quality and special through to any Joe Blow can do it, and some of it's good and some of it's bad, and so they've lost their consumers. I think the nail in the coffin perhaps has been the increase in excise that both spirits and beer have faced over the last 12 months, plus the hangover from COVID, which has meant, they're playing catch up with their profitability and cash flow. And so I think perhaps consumers don't want to pay the price for that now because the tax is so high, and so they're looking for other alternatives. And fortifieds sort of follow on from that, because we often use brandy barrels or whiskey barrels for our fortified production. They are very complex wines. They are a little bit higher alcohol than table wines. They're also often sweet, which is very appealing to consumers. So, yeah, I think it's just it's time.
Away from wine, now I've known you for a few years through ABC and media and that sort of thing. I recall you were into belly dancing at some point. Is that still on the cards? No, that's...
No. Haven't done that for a long time.
Right, okay.
No.
So what are some of your other hobbies? How do you zone out from work and everything going on here?
Well, when I was a teenager, I did archery, and that fell by the wayside when I started full-time study at the heavy end, uni and so on. And then it was very difficult to pick that up with children because it's a slow sport.
And probably not the safest for kids to be around either.
Oh, well, there's moments when you're tempted. No, you've got your safety protocols, but I did take that up BC just before COVID again, and I've been enjoying that. There is actually a component of Zen to it, where I think they call it flow in meditation terms, where you just focus on certain things and unfocus other things, and I find that really... I'm not a very good archer.
I was going to ask, are you any good?
It's a frustrating sport just like golf. One day I'll go really, really well, and then I'll spend 6 months trying to be that good again.
Keeping on that next shot is always that next... What do you call it? Pull? Draw?
It's a shot, yes.
Yep.
So you can't live on your last arrow. You have to just live on your current arrow. So whatever arrow it is, that's all that exists. The arrow, yourself, and the target, and that's it. So.
Now, I've also noticed a rather large piano in the corner. Is that yours?
Yes.
Yeah. Tell me about your music.
I studied music for a long time. I haven't played it for a bit. I'm trying to give this to my sister, who is a very, very good pianist, but doesn't have one. So we're just trying to work out how we can get it back to Melbourne for her and where we're going to put it, because it's quite big.
So how did you study music, do all your exams and all of that sort of thing?
Yeah, I did. I've got quite a musical family. So my daughter, before she became a lawyer, actually studied music at the Con. I have a cousin who's a concert pianist in the UK, and his parents both played for the Melbourne Symphony, I think it was. So, and then, it was just, music was there. We all studied music.
Are you one that has to read the music, or can you play by ear?
No, I'm not that good. I have perfect pitch and very slow fingers, so...
I spoke to someone a while back about playing the piano, and she said it's a happy place. It's that zoning out, like you mentioned about archery. Is it similar for you?
Yes, because you can't dwell on the last note you played, just on the next one. I actually find 10 fingers very difficult for the piano. I also learned the recorder, as everyone did at school, and I really enjoyed that because you get one note at a time. So, yes, I'm not very good at music.
Something I'm introducing is some quick questions at the end.
Okay, so is this like word association games?
Oh, sort of. First up, what's something I didn't ask you but should have?
Oh, I don't know.
Nothing comes to mind?
Nothing comes to mind.
All right, we'll skip that one. Favourite place in the Riverland?
Oh, on the river, upstream of Customs House. It has to be. Closely followed by Loch Luna out near Lake Bonnie. So we go both those places.
What's the best advice someone has given you?
Asbestos undies, war paint and high heels. Go get 'em, girl.
And what was that in regards to?
Facing difficult situations.
Yeah.
Yep.
Put your armour on and get out there.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And don't care what other people think. You're only human, and everyone makes mistakes. Forgive yourself.
If you could be friends with a fictional character, who would you choose?
Ooh, there's a good one. Oh, Saga from The Bridge, played by Sophia Helene.
Okay, haven't heard.
That's what you should have asked me. I've been studying Swedish.
Right, okay. Well, one of my questions here was, what's one skill you've always wanted to learn?
Well, I'm studying Swedish, yes, and I'm absolutely loving it.
So, properly through the uni or Duolingo?
Yes. No, I'm going through University of Queensland. They've got the Institute of Modern Languages and have a regular Monday night date with my classmates and my teacher. Brilliant. I'm absolutely loving it.
Do you hope it will take you somewhere, or it's just for personal enjoyment? Or?
It started off as an interest because we've sold wine into Sweden. We've actually sold wine into Finland as well. So it started off as a business interest, but I love the country. I mean, it's like Australia. It has its issues, but I love the country. And the people are amazing. And yeah, I'm just enjoying it.
And... what's one thing people are generally surprised to find out about you?
I don't know, because I know myself better than they do. I do have a sense of humour. I think people find that surprising.
Really?
Well, usually I come across so serious.
Oh, okay. Well, Jenny, thank you so much for having a chat to me on Riverland Women.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It's been a bit of a bumpy ride, but we got there in the end.
Thank you very much. That was Jenny Semmler from 919 Wines at Glossop. You can find them on Facebook. You can also find Riverland Women and the podcast station on Facebook, Instagram and YouTube. Thank you for listening to Riverland Women.